All right, people, today is the day. We are going to dig into Roblox's numbers. If you guys don't know, Roblox's direct listing comes out on March 10th, which means you can actually buy Roblox stock, which is exciting. So, what we're going to do is we're going to try to understand how Roblox makes money, where they spend their money, what their financials look like overall, and if this is a company that we would want to buy it, what I think is going to be like at least $45 per share, which is a pretty penny. What we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to try to understand how they measure themselves. So, as you can see here, they look at daily active users, hours engaged, revenue in general, bookings. We're going to talk about this. We're going to see how they make money. We're going to see where that money goes and how much of it they actually take in. And then finally, we're going to try to decide, okay, is this company worth it or not? So first things first, I want to point out some general vocab that Roblox has taught me in the past 10 hours that I've been studying this company. So daily active users, this is pretty simple. Essentially what this measures is how many people are on Roblox every day. As you can see here, this is in thousands. So in 2018, they had about 12 million daily active users, grew to just under 18 million 2019. And then in 2020, during COVID, it grew to 32 million. People were staying at home more, they spending more time on their laptops, and they're hanging out on Roblox, which is great for them. And so for 2021, they expect to hopefully maintain all those people who are daily active users and actually even bump it up a little bit, which would be great if they can actually keep that retention of the COVID growth and grow it even a little bit. I would call that a win in general because this is probably growth that didn't anticipate for a few years out. Even though it looks like a very small increase projection, if they can actually maintain, I call it a win. Hours engaged, this is basically okay, people are logging in, but that alone doesn't really tell you the full story. So what you want to know is for each active user, how much time are they actually spending on Roblox per year? So if you're looking at 30 billion hours in 2021, which is the estimate, over 35 million users, you're talking about almost 900 hours per year per user, which is essentially comes out to about 2.5 hours per day is their goal. They want you to spend 2.5 hours per day on Roblox, or that's what they're expecting. And this is going to become really important once we start talking about bookings and specifically how they actually compensate their developers. Because, just to give you a sneak peek, the way it works is they're paying their developers in a way that is, one, incentivizing them to actually create very engaging experiences within Roblox that people want to spend time in, and also make fun costumes and stuff like that. But they really are trying to incentivize their developers to create engaging experiences that take up more time. And this is reflected in they're paying their developers a butt ton of money to do that, which you'll see later. And hours engaged is a key metric for them. So this is all going to come together really nicely once we start talking about it to give you a full picture of like what is Roblox really measuring from an operating standpoint? Like what is an operational success for them and how are they actually spending their money in a way to build into that operational success and ensure that that growth actually does happen. So we're going to get into that. But right now we're still in the sneak peek. So revenue grew by a good amount. As you can see, 2018 it was 325 million, 508. They're essentially growing by just under 50% year over year over year, which is really good. And if they can actually maintain this through trying to say post COVID, but it's really not. But as COVID dies down, that would be phenomenal. Bookings is a really interesting number. And so this is booking right here. We're actually going to go into it and read their definition on their S1 filing. So essentially what they say is bookings represent the sales activity in a given period. And so bookings is sales of virtual items. So you're talking about clothes and you're talking about virtual currency in general, which is what they call Robux, So they have these Robux, which you can use for experiences, you can use for virtual items, you can use for studio developer marketplace items, so you can create cooler stuff. And then they also have a Roblox Premium, which is a subscription service that they also encapsulate under bookings. So right here, this is another really important measurement for them is average bookings per daily active user. As you can see, this is growing and growing. So what you're talking about is the average booking per that 35 million users that we saw is about $13 each. And this is a number that they obviously want to grow over time as their user base growth slows down. They want to be able to generate more money per daily active user who's on the platform. So I just wanted to call out what bookings are because this company is really funny in the way that it looks at things, and as we start digging through the numbers, some of this stuff is going to crop back up. Now that we've talked about bookings, revenue, their daily active users, their hours engaged, let's start actually going into the numbers and seeing how this stuff makes sense. All right, so this is the income statement. And before we get into it, I just want to point out real quick that for their S1 filing, they actually did not record what the end of year 2020 full numbers were. They only gave us up to Q3 of 2020. So we don't have the full picture. So a lot of this stuff is going to look a little wonky because it's going to be 3 months ended for the year, which is annoying. Which is annoying because one, it doesn't give us the full year, and two, Roblox revenue actually experiences some seasonality where they see increased revenue in Q4 due to people getting Roblox gift cards on Christmas and stuff like that. So we're not getting the full picture here, and I want to highlight that before we go in. This is what the best we could do with what we have right now. As Roblox starts to release future financial statements, hopefully we'll be able to look into it more. So revenue for 3 months ended 2020 versus 2019 grew by 70%, which is awesome. And we're going to touch on bookings right now real quick because this revenue number doesn't actually show the full picture. Roblox records their revenue in a really weird way where we keep talking about this bookings idea where people buy virtual currency. Roblox actually records that revenue as deferred revenue over a 23-month period. I'm not an accountant here, so I'm a little out of my zone, but essentially what they do is they take the amount of money that's generated by bookings and they spread it out over the average lifetime of an active user, which is 23 months. So they don't actually realize some of the revenue that they generated from bookings at the same time. So all of that is to say that this 613 revenue number right here doesn't give you the full picture of how much revenue they actually brought in. What they actually brought in was 613, which you saw above, and another 630 million in deferred revenue. That's bookings that they won't realize until next year, because of the way that they look at their 23-month daily active user lifetime. All in all, if you want to really think about it, they generated closer to 1.2 billion in revenue, but accounting is funny and they do things in an interesting way. All in all, if you look at it, their total revenue plus the change in deferred revenue, which is the bookings, it grew from 457 million to 1.2 billion. It was a big change, in large part, of course, due to COVID and people just being around more. They increased their user base by a ton. This will be really intriguing in the future to see if they can actually maintain what they gained during COVID, if they can maintain the increase in daily active users and they can keep monetizing those users for the future going forward. One more thing about bookings real quick is a substantial amount of their bookings come from the US and Canada, 68% in 2020, 70% in 2019. They had 19% come from Europe, 8% from Asia Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, and 5% from the rest of the world, which is primarily Latin America. This will be interesting to watch in the future because they just signed on a deal with Tencent in China to bring Roblox over there. So this will be an interesting dynamic to watch going forward if they can, one, start to expand their base into more countries, which they want to do, and two, if they can start monetizing their international customer base more going forward. That's going to be the really interesting thing to watch. But anyway, now that we've kind of talked about bookings a little bit, revenue in general, let's go into their expenses. They break out their expenses in a really interesting way. So they have cost of revenue, and we're going to go back over here and we're going to look at cost of revenue. This is essentially payment processing fees for third-party distribution channels. So what you're talking about is credit card fees. Like, someone pays to buy Robux through their credit card. They have to pay a small payment processing fee. And so as you can see here, that cost of revenue increases about the same rate as the revenue does. So you can see it was 23% of their total revenue in 2019, 26% in 2020. So it's about the same. Basically, that's just the cost of doing business. People are going to pay through credit cards primarily for something that's a digital product. They got to pay some processing fees. Developer exchange fees is an interesting one. This number grew by 197% from 2019 to 2020, and as an expense of its total revenue, it went from 20 to 35%. And so what I have here is basically they were paying 2,400 developers in 2019, and it's 3,800 in 2020. This is a really important indication of where Roblox is as a company. So Roblox as a company, 79% of their employees are actually these developers. And I say employees in air quotes because some of them are just independent people who are making things for the company. But 79%, they're a very lean company. They don't spend a whole ton on administrative expenses. They give a lot of their money back to their developers to encourage them to actually create better, bigger experiences that will engage people for longer periods of time and cause them to buy more money. And so what I have here is essentially the Roblox economy. So what you can see is users can purchase Robux in two ways: one-time purchases or via Roblox Premium, which is a subscription that we talked about earlier. And so what they do is whenever someone buys Robux, they can give money back to the developers based on that Robux. What they do is they essentially, for every Robux, the exchange fee for that is about 1 cent. For every Robux that they generate, they pay that developer or creator about 0.0035, so 35% of that 1 cent. You're talking, that's a big chunk of change that they give to their developers, and that's reflected in the income statement here. You can see that the developer exchange fees as a total percent of revenue is 35%, because any Robux they generate, every 1 cent they generate off that Robux, they pay 35% of it to the developer. And we're going to get into this in more detail, but I just want to point out the ways that developers can create stuff that generate Robux. Sale of access to experiences and enhancements in their experiences, engagement-based payouts. So essentially what this is when they have premium subscribers, people who are paying every month to get Robux at a discounted amount. They want to keep those people engaged. So what they do is they will pay developers who have experiences in Roblox that are engaging to these premium subscribers. They'll pay them a little bit of money because they're keeping paying customers around. They want to do that. And then, so sale of content and tools between developers is essentially, if I'm a developer and I create something that is cool for other developers to want to do, they can spend some Robux to buy that tool and use it for their own experiences. So now you have your own economy in there. And then finally, items for Avatar Marketplace. They have creators and they pay them to create things that people would want to buy to deck out their characters and stuff. That's essentially how Roblox makes money. People pay for experiences, they pay for the premium subscription where they can get discounted Robux, and people can buy items. So, the very interesting thing as we go back to this developer exchange fee that I want to point out is even though they are paying all 35% of their total revenue to these developers, developers aren't just cashing out at 100% of the time. Because what's happening is sometimes those developers they play Roblox. So they're putting money back into they're putting that Robux that they earn back into their own Roblox game. Whether it is to deck out their own characters, to buy more developer tools, they're basically putting that Robux back into their Roblox economy. So Roblox isn't paying as much. They didn't actually highlight this in the S1 where I could find it, but this would be a really interesting thing to see at what rate they Roblox developers actually cash out their Robux. I would love to see that. But I just wanted to point that out. Now that we've talked about the developer exchange fees, the next thing we have to talk about is infrastructure and trust and safety. This is very important because Roblox, I keep getting messed up between Robux and Roblox. Roblox has had some recent allegations with child safety, people coercing people to go off the platform and meet up in real life. It's not a good look. It's gotten banned in some places due to this, and it raises a lot of concerns about whether people would want their kids on Roblox, especially as it gets bigger and bigger. These stories are going to come out. Right now, 56% of their user base is under 13 years old, which poses a significant risk if you have allegations coming out. It's a strong allegation, so what they're doing is they're invested very heavily in infrastructure and trust and safety. So what this is they pay people, we're going to go here and look at it. What they do is they pay data centers and they pay people to essentially monitor what's going on in Roblox and ensure that the community stays safe. That's about what you need to know about it. And they spend a lot of money doing that. As you can see, this is like 30% of their revenue that they're spending right here on infrastructure and safety. They're not playing around because they know that with their big push on connecting people, they have to make it as safe as possible. And if you listen to their investor day, it's one of the first things that their CEO talked about is making it safe for people because they know that it is it is not going to be good if more stories come out about Roblox being a dangerous community. So they invest a lot of money in that and they have to. It's just the nature of the business that they're in. They have to invest a lot of money. What I like to see is they invest a lot of money in R&D. They have recently acquired a few companies that do AI and different stuff with avatars. So they're investing back into their product and trying to make it more engaging. They're doing brand partnerships, which isn't an R&D, but they're trying to make Roblox more experience oriented. And if you listen to their investor day, that's what they talk about in Hammer Home. Their vision for Roblox is to make it like a hub for people to come together and have experiences together. So that's why that hours engaged number is so important and why they give so much money to developers who have engaging experiences, because at the end of the day, they know they're not going to keep growing at an exponential rate forever. So they need people to be engaged for longer periods of time, and they need to create experiences that are more engaging so they can keep people on the platform for longer and get more money out of their existing customers. Finally, so as I talked about, they're a very lean company. General and administrative is really low. And sales and marketing. This is another thing I really like about Roblox is a lot of their growth is actually pretty organic. They don't spend a whole lot of money on sales and marketing. People just come in through word of mouth in large part, which is awesome. So when you're looking at general income, the numbers don't look great. Just on a general income statement, 613 million in revenue and 800 million in expenses. It doesn't add up. It's a negative number. But this doesn't factor in, like we talked about before, the bookings, their deferred revenue. Now, for their balance sheet, I just want to point out their current assets. This was really hard to find, but I found it in the F8, I believe, in the S1 filing. Their current assets to current liability ratio is greater than 1, which is good, and it's increasing, which is also good. And their total cash is also increasing, which is good. Stockholder equity is still negative because even though they have more assets than liabilities, they have something called an accumulated deficit, which is essentially their net loss year over year is growing so far. They keep bringing that number on. You subtract that number from total assets minus total liabilities, and you end up with a negative stockholder equity anyway, which is not something you want to see, but I understand it's a growing company and we'll keep watching this as it develops. And finally, we're going to look at cash flows over here. And the biggest thing to point out is their cash flow from operating activities grew by over 400%, which is awesome. Their financing activities wasn't really all that exciting. They just didn't spend as much on acquiring in this past period, so that's why that number's decreased. And then finally, they did have a big preferred stock private investing offering. That's why you can see there's a positive change in investing activities. They issued some more preferred stock, and this is going to be much more interesting in the next period once this company actually goes after their direct listing, and we can see how that number grows. So all in all, cash, like you saw before on the balance sheet, grew from 303 million to over 800 million, which is good. So all in all, cash has grown. The ratio of their total current assets to current liabilities has grown a little bit, and that's good. It's greater than 1, which means that they can pay off all of their current liabilities, their current debts, with their current assets. To summarize this again and bring it full circle, so what you love to see, in addition to daily active users and hours engaged growing, what you love to see is they're monetizing those users. So more people are spending more time on the platform and they're paying. All in all, this is really good. Personally, I'm a little shy to invest right at the direct listing. There might be that hype factor where people get excited, they buy in, the stock price balloons in the short term. But personally, for me, I want to see a little bit more from Roblox in 2021 to see how they maintain those active users and their bookings and how they monetize people going forward before I invest. But I would love to hear if you guys are going to invest, if you guys think $45 is a fair share price for them, or if you think that money could be better spent somewhere else. So please like the video if it helped you. Subscribe to my channel. It takes a lot of time to put these things together. Really appreciate you showing some love, and let me know down below if you think you're going to buy Roblox or if you think that your money is better spent somewhere else. Have a good day, guys.